My name is Jeremy Waldrop. I am President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership. Thank you for joining us for the second quarter 2026 State of Downtown Pittsburgh. We've been doing these quarterly meetings for over a year now, and clearly they are catching on. We did have to boost our numbers up. We had over 400 guests sign up to join us today. Today's focus is downtown retail, a topic near and dear to just about everyone, and one of the most visible indicators to the average person of our city and certainly our downtown's health and vitality. I'm excited to be joined here today by my partner in crime, Kate Urban, our Senior Director of Economic Development. Kate has been leading our retail and data efforts and really been tirelessly in her advocacy and support of small businesses, both new and existing here in downtown. So if you haven't had an opportunity to thank Kate, please do when you see her on the street next. We're also joined by special guests from the Moonshot Museum and Birgo Capital to talk a little bit about their collaboration in the cultural district and just kind of highlight some of the partnerships that we're seeing here in downtown Pittsburgh. So for today's meeting, we have a number of topics. We're going to start looking at just national retail trends, some of the things that we're seeing that we think have some implications here in downtown Pittsburgh. We're going to talk a little bit about downtown foot traffic and how many folks are actually coming into the Triangle. We're going to give an update and an overview of the Vibrancy Initiative. We're going to talk about kind of the retail evolution and turnaround here in downtown Pittsburgh. We're going to show you some pictures of some new storefront activations and retailers here in downtown. Then we're going to kick it over to our friends to talk about the power of partnerships. We're going to quickly review some next steps, and then we're going to open it up to the Q&A. If you find yourself just with a burning question, we do ask that you just throw that into the chat. We can review those, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. But thanks again for joining us, and I'm going to kick it over to Kate.
Thanks, Jeremy. So before we get into our downtown data, I want to ground us a bit in what we've been seeing nationally. So I want to make a note. This isn't a direct comparison to our numbers, but it helps us frame where the retail market is today from that national lens. And so the national data I'm referencing here comes primarily from groups like Colliers, which track leasing activity, rents, and vacancy across multiple markets. And that gives us an overall good read on retail performance. So for the past few years, the narrative has been that retail was in decline, but the reality in 2026 does look actually quite different. Physical retail hasn't just held on, it's outperformed expectations. So 3 out of every $4 retail dollars were spent in a physical store, and sales grew about 3.7%, which was more than double the forecast. Rents also reached record highs, and the vacancy is held steady at 4.3 nationally. So an important note before we go further, this is national data. It blends suburban and urban markets together. And those are two very different stories right now. A lot of the strength that you're seeing in these numbers is driven by suburban retail, those kind of open air centers, grocery anchored centers, and suburban neighborhood retail. Urban downtowns are in a different place. So while the national vacancy rate across the board is about 4.3%, in downtown Pittsburgh, we're closer to that 20% mark. And that's not unique to us. Most major downtowns are working through similar gaps. And so both things are true at once. Retail is strong nationally, and downtown retail has some ground to make up. But what connects those two stories is the type of retail that's performing, and consumers are really prioritizing experience. So consumer research firms like Zappy, which looks at how people choose to spend their time and money, is showing that 57% of consumers would rather spend money on a great experience than on buying something new. And nationally, retailers are responding to that with 82% increasing their investment in experiential marketing last year. And then demand is shifting towards food and beverage, wellness, and kind of place-based concepts. And this is where downtown has a real advantage. Because of our density, our walkability, and our mix of uses, we can deliver the kind of experience suburban retail can't replicate. So that's the opportunity in front of us. So I want to dig a little bit into what retail is performing well overall, and what's kind of driving that performance, as well as where there might be some lags. And so nationally, the categories gaining traction are the ones that we as cities and downtowns can really lean into. And then there's the categories that are under pressure, which might help explain why certain types of spaces are harder to fill or kind of retain, both within our downtown and across the country. So as I said, on the stronger side, we have our food and beverage, which continues to lead. This is especially true in urban markets. It's consistently one of the top leasing categories nationally, And that includes everything from coffee and quick service to more experiential dining concepts. And then right behind that is wellness and personal services, things like boutique fitness, yoga, beauty, and personal care. These are the types of uses that serve nearby residential populations directly. And so as urban downtowns continue to add residents, demand for those services tends to grow with them. And then necessity retail is holding steady, things like smaller format grocery, pharmacy, and convenience stores. Those are the kinds of places people build into their daily routines, whether they live or work nearby. And then finally, there's the experiential and destination retail, local brands, specialty concepts, and immersive uses. Really anything that gives people a reason to leave their house for something that they can't get online. And this is where downtowns can really thrive on what we offer. On the other side, there are categories that are still facing some real headwinds. Mid-tier traditional apparel, which typically relies on either very high residential density or strong tourism. Those are markets that have kind of been seeing the most pressure in this segment. Home goods and furniture are also a bit softer right now. These are destination categories that really depend on consistent foot traffic patterns, and markets are kind of still rebuilding that daily flow pattern and still kind of seeing those softer numbers. And then department stores are continuing to kind of split, with luxury holding up, but mid-tier continuing to struggle. And then finally, that large format pharmacy, the older big box models, those are contracting nationwide. And then one quick note, Philadelphia is a useful comparison point as we kind of turn into our own downtown numbers. Recently, Center City reported retail occupancy at about 84.2% in March 2026, up from 82.6% about 6 months earlier. And Market Street in downtown Philadelphia, which has faced some of the similar challenges that we have, has been showing measurable improvement. So that trajectory is not unusual. Recovery is possible. It's taking time, consistency, and then that right mix of uses and partnerships. So in a minute, we'll kind of dig into what's happening in downtown, where we stand, and how it kind of compares to these nationwide trends. But a kind of nice key takeaway of looking at the national numbers is that national retail is strong, but the rules around retail really have changed. So retail's not broken. It's performing pretty well. Demand is there. The capital is there. Retailers are still actively expanding into physical space. But again, the way that it works today is different from the way it worked 5 or 10 years ago. It's not just about filling spaces with traditional tenants and expecting foot traffic to follow. The types of concepts that are succeeding now are more focused on experience, on place, and then how actually people spend their time. And the shift is showing up in who's leasing spaces, what kinds of spaces they're looking for, including what size spaces they're looking for, and then how those spaces are being built out and used. So when we talk about downtown, the challenge isn't that retail demand has disappeared. It's that the market's evolved and our strategy has to evolve with it. So that's the lens for everything that follows. How do we align downtown spaces, incentives, and environment with the kind of retail that's growing and succeeding today? So let's take a little bit of a look at what's happening in downtown on the kind of activity level, and then we'll look at our retail as well. And so downtown activity has really evolved since 2019 across 4 measures. In particular, visitors, employees physically in the office, as well as just sort of overall day-to-day activity. But then also we have a growing residential population. So at a high level, activity has really stabilized, but then that composition of activity has changed significantly since COVID-19. The biggest shift continues to be office presence. Daily in-office activities held relatively steady over the past 3 years at around 55% of 2019 levels. And that appears to reflect that kind of structural shift in workplace behavior, really looking at that kind of hybrid and flexible work schedule. So folks are not in the office necessarily 5 days a week at the levels they were in 2019. But at the same time, visitor activity has recovered a lot more strongly. Visitors are back now roughly about 81% of 2019 levels, peaking around 86% in 2024. And so in many ways, visitors, events, and experience-based trips are helping fill some of that gap left by the reduced office activity. So when you combine those trends, you're getting that kind of overall activity line. And downtown has recovered significantly since the 2020 lows. But activity is kind of leveling off into this new baseline rather than continuing to climb. That being said, a particularly bright light in downtown has been the residential market. Residential occupancy has remained very strong, generally in the 92 to 94% range over the past several years. And that's an important stabilizing factor. And it reflects a continued shift towards downtown functioning as a more mixed-use neighborhood. And we're wrapping up our final numbers for Q1 2026, but currently the downtown residential occupancy is holding steady at 94%, which is the highest occupancy rate in the entire greater downtown region. So I think a good takeaway here is not that downtown activity has disappeared or has been devastated. It's just that downtown is being used differently. It's less dependent on the traditional 5-day office pattern and increasingly driven by visitors, residents, events, and experience-based activity. And that shift has major implications for retail, programming, and the public realm because demand patterns today are fundamentally different from how they were pre-pandemic. So I'm going to hand it back to Jeremy to discuss some of the ways that we've responded to those changing demand patterns.
Thanks, Kate. As Kate mentioned, I think everyone's still curious about how downtown can appropriately respond to the demand that's at hand and how that continues to evolve. So the PDP launched the Vibrancy Initiative, and it's a continuation and expansion of work that our organization, along with a whole host of partners, have been doing for well over 2 decades now. Our goal was to implement 100 storefront activations, sidewalk repairs, lighting installations, public art, and new outdoor dining setups throughout downtown before the NFL draft. So everybody loves a good deadline, and that certainly gave us one there. So as you all have heard through countless reports, we successfully hosted the NFL draft on April 23rd through the 25th, drawing approximately 805,000 visitors to downtown and the North Shore over that 3-day period. From fan zones to stages to the draft experience, the footprint, while it's centered on the North Shore and Point State Park, downtown was certainly a shining star. And partner with the city of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and dozens of local partners, we really led the rallying cry of readying up our properties. Basically, companies coming over, it's time to get your sidewalks, your storefronts, and art on the facades and really red up downtown Pittsburgh. And we really are appreciative of all the partnerships that came into play. As you'll see in this next slide, the photos kind of speak for themselves. And our goal now is to kind of continue this effort and keep this positive momentum and traction, keep it moving forward. So from Market Street, just off of Market Square, to the new anchor that was just opened up in downtown Pittsburgh, to the pedestrian pathway that went from Point State Park down a very vibrant 6th Street, over the Clemente Bridge and down West Gen into the Acrisure Stadium footprint area. Countless folks from local artists, local retailers, we had buskers, really just making sure that downtown was a place that people wanted to be a part of and that we could be proud of as Pittsburghers. That kind of led us into the overall Vibrancy Initiative. So as I mentioned, basically until about 11 p.m. on 4/22, we were wrapping up projects to get ready for the masses. With over 100 vibrancy initiatives that included 53 retail and storefront activations, 56 streetscape and public realm enhancements. We were thrilled to see this all kind of come together. I'd like to thank our philanthropic and corporate partners, community members that consistently step up and support this work. I'd also like to thank Yaron Zober and the City of Pittsburgh Department of Public Works. Those teams were instrumental in getting us ready for the masses. We're not doing a victory lap here, though. This is just the beginning. We recently received some additional funds to continue this effort, so the Vibrancy Initiative still stands. So if you felt like you were left out of that first run, please reach out, talk to myself, talk to Kate, talk to our colleague Aaron. We want to continue to make these big and small changes because as you've heard the mayor say, details matter, and this is certainly one of those. So I'm going to give it back to Kate to kind of dive into some of the details of the Vibrancy Initiative and that work. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. All right, everyone stay with me. We're going to dive a little bit into some data, and then we'll follow that up with some great visuals of the work that's been done. So I really want to look and kind of shift into the impact of this work. When looking at our vacancy rate, and removing some of these major redevelopment projects from the vacancy calculation, and kind of counting on those signed leases that are currently in build out and move-in phases as occupied, downtown retail vacancy comes in at approximately 18.6%. And that really gives us a clearer picture of what's actively available on the market today. While it's still higher than the national figures we looked at earlier, as we discussed, those numbers could blend the suburban and urban markets together. So it's not really a direct comparison. And so a useful benchmark is that Center City, Philadelphia, which was reporting around 84% occupied or roughly 16% vacancy. And that puts them in a very similar range to our downtown. So I think the important thing here is that this is not an outlier condition. This is where a lot of urban downtowns are right now as we're kind of successfully moving forward from the pretty devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So in total, we're tracking about 1.4 million square feet of retail space. And of that, roughly 271,000 square feet is currently vacant across 67 storefronts. So now the chart on the right, that's looking at vacancy a little bit differently. This is looking at a size segmentation analysis. And we're looking and including these large redevelopment and repositioning properties here because they still have a major impact on the overall composition of both vacant retail space in downtown and just the impact from the street when you're walking around. So when you look at vacancy through that lens, a clearer pattern is starting to emerge. About 137,000 square feet is in these smaller storefronts. That's the under 5,000 square feet. But 80,000 is in the 5 to 10,000 square foot range. About another 160,000 is in the 10 to 20,000 square foot range. And roughly 143,000 square feet sits in spaces that are 20,000 square feet or above. That's a mouthful. But what's important to note is that vacancy is not evenly distributed. When looking at it from this lens, it's heavily concentrated in a relatively small number of large spaces. So just over 13 vacant spaces, each larger than 10,000 square feet, account for 58% of all vacant retail square footage in downtown. But the majority of our storefronts are those smaller spaces, and we have strong tools for how to activate those through our pop-ups, through window activations, and leasing support programs like our downtown rent abatement. So let's look at this kind of through a lens of the vacancy reduction and active leasing progress. And so again, here we're kind of pulling out those major redevelopment and repositioning projects and looking at what's really actively on the market. So since Q1 2026, we've reduced tracked vacancy by about 2.6%. So that's almost a 3% reduction in just one quarter. That translates to about 38,000 square feet being brought back into active use and 13 storefronts moving from vacant to occupied. Furthermore, when you break down the 270,000 square feet currently vacant across that 67 storefronts, the story starts to become more focused. But 37% of the vacancies are in spaces under 5,000 square feet. Another 30% in the 5 to 10,000 square foot range and 34% in that 10 to 20,000 square foot range. What's important is what's no longer driving the numbers. When you remove the redevelopment properties, there's not a single vacancy over 20,000 square feet in this data set. So that means the remaining vacancy is concentrated in those smaller to mid-sized storefronts. That's significant because those are the types of spaces where our current tools have been most effective, particularly long-term pop-ups and rent abatements. So we're not just seeing activity, but we're really seeing measurable progress. Vacancies coming down, storefronts are being absorbed, and the remaining challenge is becoming increasingly more targeted and manageable. So if the last two slides frame the downtown Pittsburgh vacancy challenges and progress, this slide really is showing how we've been responding to it. So the headline here is 83%. That's the share of vacant retail square footage that's actively being addressed in some way right now, whether that's a visual intervention, a pop-up, or a lease deal that's in motion. And this includes everything from the smaller storefronts to these larger redevelopment properties. So this is a full picture of activity across the system. So here, when we kind of include those redevelopment properties, there's about 89 vacant storefronts and 74 fall into one of the categories that we're actively activating, or about 435,000 square feet. So window displays do account for the largest share by square footage, about 15 spaces and about 254,000 square feet. And a large part of that is these large-scale installations by Joshua Ice and Ian Brill that I'll show you some visuals of in a moment. And then vinyl and mural installations are also kind of taking up the greatest number of storefronts, 27 in total. These are typically spaces that are under construction or they need significant renovation where interior activations just aren't feasible. So this is how we keep those storefronts from going dark while longer-term work is underway. And then pop-ups are a different strategy. They're short-term activations designed to lead to long-term tenancy. We have 15 of those. with lease and license agreements ranging from 6 months to 1 year and covering about 59,000 square feet. In addition, 3 spaces are currently recently were filled with through the downtown rent abatement supported leases, which are structured for those long-term vacancies. So we're starting to see that pipeline convert. And then right now, 7 spaces are in the process of being filled with new tenants, 6 with signed leases or LOIs, and 1 more that's in active negotiation. So the rent abatement is playing a key role in making these deals work and helping bridge the gap and making more of these leases viable. So stepping back, these tools are doing 2 different but complementary things. The visual and activation work keeps storefronts active and it maintains the momentum. And then the leasing tools, especially the rent abatement program, are what ultimately kind of helping bring in some of those long-term tenants into those spaces. And so our goal is to keep this activation coverage moving forward, eventually getting us to 100%. So our kind of next key takeaway is that today, almost every storefront window facing a downtown sidewalk is presenting with some kind of activation, whether an artistic intervention or a commercial retail use. Window displays do make up that largest share, but we have some fantastic interior installations. And then that's coupled with some very high quality pop-up retail, as well as some long-term leases through our rent abatement program. And so we're really kind of coupling all of these programs together to move spaces from vacancy to activity and then just improving the overall experience of walking through downtown in the process. So briefly, I want to go over the business openings in downtown over the last couple of years. So this slide shows business openings in downtown over the past 2.5 years, along with the role that PDP incentive programs have played in supporting this growth. Now, this is specifically looking at long-term leases and long-term pop-ups. So in 2024, we saw 17 new businesses opening, 8 of which received support through PDP programs. In 2021, openings increased significantly to 31 new businesses, with roughly 11 of those benefiting from PDP incentive support, including the downtown rent abatement. In 2026, we've already seen 20 new openings to date, 17 of which connected to PDP support in some way. And I want to provide a little bit of context around that 2026 number, because this is not simply about subsidizing new businesses. A big part of what happened this year was what Jeremy was talking about earlier. It's the result of that concentrated coordination, targeted resources, and a very real deadline created by the NFL draft. We had city partners, property owners, permitting staff, funders, brokers, and PDP all moving at the same time toward a shared goal. And that really allowed projects that might normally take many more months to move forward much faster, whether that meant accelerating permitting, closing financing gaps, coordinating build-outs, or supporting tenant recruitment. So you're seeing here is really the impact of alignment and momentum. The draft created a sense of urgency, but it also demonstrated what's possible when downtown stakeholders are all rowing in the same direction. And importantly, many of these are long-term businesses with signed leases, not temporary activations. So the momentum we created ahead of the draft is continuing beyond the event itself. So there's a couple of important takeaways here. First, business openings are continuing to trend upwards. Even in a changing downtown environment, we're seeing new tenants, new investments, and new ground floor activity. And then second, these incentive programs are helping move projects from interest to opening. In 2026 especially, the combination of targeted resources, strong partnerships, and that urgency allowed many projects to move forward very fast. And importantly, they're not temporary. These are long-term businesses that you're going to be introduced to in just a minute. And we do want to kind of look at what the trend has been for our downtown businesses. So when we look at our net businesses, this is a chart we really should celebrate. From 2019 to 2022, downtown Pittsburgh lost businesses every single year. So even before the pandemic, 2019 was a net business loss of 10 businesses. Then in 2020, there was a net loss of 57 businesses, which was the worst year on recent record. 2021, we were still down 7. And then 2022 nearly broke even at a net loss of 1. So it's 4 straight years of decline. That means there were more businesses lost than new businesses open. But the trend reversed. 2023, we saw a net positive of 11, the first time in years that we were adding businesses faster than losing them. 2024 remained positive at a plus 5. And then 2025 grew again, adding a net of 12 businesses. 2026, we only have data through May, but we're already at a net positive of 17, which is more growth in 5 months than we saw in any full year coming out of the pandemic. So cumulatively, downtown is climbing out of a very deep losses from COVID, but the chart's clearly showing that trajectory has changed. We've seen 4 straight years of improving net business performance, and the growth has been accelerating year over year. And this roughly aligns with the launch of our downtown rent abatement program and our broader incentive and activation work, alongside the efforts of many public and private partners. So what we're seeing is that downtown's not just stabilizing, it's growing, and that pace of growth is starting to pick up. So really the shift isn't happening on its own. It's the result of sustained effort across activation, investment, and targeted incentives. For years, we saw a steady pattern of business losses, vacancies were compounding, and there wasn't a clear mechanism to reverse that trend. But we've been very intentional to change those patterns. Activation has helped bring spaces back into use, even if it's temporarily. Investment in the public realm has made downtown more appealing and more navigable. And our incentive programs, particularly pop-ups and rent abatements, have lowered the barrier of entry for new businesses. And these tools are working together, not in isolation, as part of a broader strategy. And the result is that we've now seen these 4 years of consecutive net business growth. But that doesn't mean the work's done. It does just signal that the trajectory is shifted, and we're moving from reacting to loss to actively creating that momentum. So far, we've talked a lot about data, vacancy, and market conditions. The next slides are really about what those strategies look like on the ground. Because retail recovery, it's not abstract. It shows up in storefront windows, new tenants, lights on at night, and people having reasons to stop, walk, and spend time in downtown. One of the biggest tools we've used has been the downtown rent abatement program. And the goal with this program is simple: reduce the upfront risk for businesses willing to make a long-term commitment to downtown through a multi-year lease. The program can provide up to a 50% rent subsidy during a business's first year of operation, capped at $2,000 per month. It's intentionally just structured to support permanent occupancy and long-term investment rather than short-term activation. Since launch, the rent abatement supported 13 new businesses, with another 7 currently in the pipeline preparing to open soon. These are locally owned restaurants, retailers, hospitality concepts, and neighborhood-serving businesses that are helping to reactivate key corridors in downtown. One of our newest additions is Rebel Hound on Liberty Avenue, a new pet boutique. We also have Fari's Custom Clothiers, which is a beautiful and fantastic tailor, and Mild to Spicy, a delicious Indian street food restaurant. All 3 of these are currently on Liberty Ave, and there's many more throughout the downtown area. And we've seen the demand for this program increase significantly. Applications surged at the end of 2025, and the current funding round is already fully subscribed. The program is expected to reopen in Q3 of this year, and we already have a number of folks kind of queuing in the pipeline. So what this program really demonstrates is that there's relatively targeted financial support can have an outsized impact on an urban retail environment that's still recovering. In many cases, the rent abatement's helping bridge the gap between what a small business can realistically afford and the cost of opening a downtown storefront. And the result's not just fewer vacancy, it's a stronger mix of uses, more active streets, and that continued shift towards downtown functioning as a more mixed-use neighborhood. At the same time, like as we said, we're approaching vacancy differently, and that's also through storefront art and visual activation. So not every space is immediately lease ready. Some properties are under renovation, so art interventions are our best solution. Some also need substantial investment before a tenant can move in, but that doesn't mean that the storefronts need to just sit dark. We've been working with artists, property owners, and cultural partners to transform these windows into visual assets for downtown. The goal is partly aesthetic, but it's also psychological. Active storefronts change how people experience a corridor. They signal momentum, investment, and care. This installation, located on 5th Avenue, is by local artist Ian Brill, and it transforms a series of long vacant storefronts along 5th Avenue into an immersive, light-based public art experience that's visible from the street day and night. The companion installation by local artist Joshua Chow and Ice extends that energy onto Smithfield Street, wrapping multiple storefronts along the corridor of Smithfield into a large-scale light and reflective installations. Together, these projects turn what was previously a dark and inactive block into something highly visible and experiential, and they create a stronger pedestrian environment, improving the feeling of kind of activity, particularly after hours. Additionally, Artist Owen Lowry's installation takes a very playful and interactive approach to storefront activation, transforming part of the Century building along 7th Street into a motion responsive multiverse of animated window displays. The installation by IV takes a quieter and more environmental approach to storefront activation, transforming the 6th Street and Liberty Ave store frontage into an interactive piece that changes over time in response to temperature, light, weather conditions, and even human touch. And Seth Clark's installation explores the idea of home and community through a series of sculptural forms displayed in the windows of the historic Heinz 57 Center along 6th Ave. And the installation by the Pittsburgh Film Office celebrates Pittsburgh's long history as a film and television city, transforming storefront windows along Wood Street into a retrospective of productions filmed here from the 1920s through today. And then there's the pop-up work, which sits somewhere between the art activation and the long-term leasing. These projects allow businesses to test downtown with lower upfront risk, while also helping property owners bring spaces back into productive use. Some will remain temporary, but others are already converting to long-term opportunities. Here, Derek Tynes Consignment brings high-end fashion and lifestyle concept to Smithfield Street, activating a storefront with a locally owned business that blends retail and personal styling in a way that feels distinctly Pittsburgh. The Studio by Pittsburgh Candle transforms a vacant storefront on Wooden Street into an interactive candle-making bar and retail experience, while the Black Brew House introduces a new experiential beverage concept to Forbes Avenue, creating an inviting social space that adds energy and nightlife activity while expanding the range of locally owned hospitality offerings in downtown. The Silly Goose brings a playful, highly visible gift and novelty concept to Wood Street, adding color, a big personality, and another independently owned retail destination to the corridor. Conflirty brings a creative floral and gift concept to Fifth Avenue, combining fresh flowers, floral preservations, gifts, and hands-on workshops in a welcoming studio space. Eastern Passage introduced boutique retail concept focused on Asian fashion, home goods, and cultural products, diversifying downtown's retail mix while activating a prominent Fifth Avenue storefront. And Pittsburgh Brewing Company brings a recognizable regional brand back into the urban core, adding a new experiential beverage destination that strengthens evening activity and event-driven foot traffic. And importantly, these businesses are just a sampling of the new retail concepts opening in downtown right now. We have a pipeline of long-term businesses currently under construction, in lease-up, or preparing to open in the coming months in downtown. And there's quite a few additional pop-up concepts that are throughout the downtown. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Jimyse Brown, Executive Director of Moonshot Museum, which recently opened a pop-up location for their lunar simulation lab at 810 Penn Ave, a building owned by Birgo Capital in the heart of the cultural district, and directly across from the newly opened Arts Landing. Dr. Brown's going to speak a little bit on why Moonshot Museum wanted to get involved in this effort, what drew them to the downtown pop-up model, and why they saw this particular location as an opportunity to connect with new audiences and be part of the broader energy and momentum in downtown right now. Dr. Brown?
Thanks, Kate. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Jimyse Brown, as Kate had mentioned, the Executive Director of Moonshot Museum. A few weeks ago, Kate had approached us about this wonderful, great opportunity for a pop-up location. Our main museum is located at 1016 North Lincoln Avenue on the north side. But what attracted me most, to Kate's point, was the ability to increase our brand awareness. We're fairly new. We're going to be 4 in October, but to be able to come into a new space, to be able to service Pittsburgh more, to work with a community from a financial standpoint, as Kate had mentioned earlier on the call, that sometimes could be a barrier for smaller organizations or businesses to be able to come in and take part of, which was what was attractive on the business side. When we're looking at some of the other qualitative positives for us, it was really about how can we continue to service more people? How can we continue to service them at a higher level, at a deeper level that we've been doing before? previously. So it allowed us to be able to create new opportunities for families and students and tourists, professionals and other community members so that they can engage in more of space exploration, especially coming off the backs of a successful Artemis 2 mission. How can we continue to focus on the future of technology, especially as we in Pittsburgh are in this ed tech boom, and we have a lot of great things coming along the forefront when it not only comes to space, but robotics and AI. And in a way that feels accessible, exciting, but also tangible in a level that's not intimidating for our guests to be able to partake in. It allowed Moonshot to be able, as I mentioned before, to strengthen to strengthen our awareness, expand conversations around workforce development, which is one of our pillars. And so within our pop-up, we created a lunar simulation lab. So we're able to expand our ability to increase coding classes, to do circuitry classes, to be able to work on virtual engineering in ISS mission labs, for some of those things that we offer. It positioned us to again be in the middle of what is a growing market and continue to expand in terms of innovation within our ecosystem. It allowed us to open doors for new partnerships, such as Birgo Capital, which we're really grateful for them allowing us to be in this space. But it also allowed us to expand partnerships with Astrobotic Technology and Macero Renovation, and a budding relationship with some of the other aerospace organizations that are within town, which is great because again, it allowed us to create a new line of sustainable revenue, but partnerships as well to continue to serve the community. And then we do a lot of work with our youth. We're a museum for all, but we do have a hyper focus on our youth. And for that, it allowed them again to continue to expand, to see the careers in aerospace and engineering, robotics and design and technology, in no other place that they can do, in the city, but with us. And a lot of times people think that that's just reserved to Houston or Florida. And so it expanded our revenue streams. It increased our visibility. It has allowed us to be more creative into how we can serve and who we can serve. And we're really excited to continue that, to see how we can continue to activate this space. And so it was a positive and a yes from the beginning, and it's a positive and a yes now. So Kate, we're grateful to you, Jeremy. We're grateful and thankful to the PDP and Birgo Capital. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. It's you having the Moonshot Museum's Lunar Simulation Lab in downtown is such a great opportunity, and we're thrilled that you are excited and ready to kind of jump at this opportunity and move very quickly. I think you all have no idea how fast they set that space up, but it was a fantastic collaborative effort. So I'm personally thrilled to have them in downtown, and I think it brings such a unique piece of our innovation economy and what Pittsburgh kind of is about, moving forward into our downtown. So thank you for all the work that you've done, Dr. Brown. We're thrilled to see you in that space, and then hopefully we can keep you in downtown for as long as possible. And with that, I'd like to also hand it now over to Andrew Reichert, from founder and CEO of Birgo Capital, to speak a little bit about Birgo's interest in getting involved in Project Pop-Up, why they were willing and excited to partner with Dr. Brown and Moonshot Museum on this activation, and really how property owners can kind of play an important role in helping bring new energy, visibility, and activity to downtown storefronts.
Thanks so much, Kate. Thank you for having me, and thank you to the entire Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, Jeremy and Kate. You're doing amazing work. I'm excited to get to be a part of it, and thank you, Dr. Brown, for the work that you're doing with the Moonshot Museum. I live on the north side, so I'm just a stone's throw away from the main location there. So when we were asked to be a part of the downtown pop-up, it was an easy yes. We're really honored to get to be a part of it. We view our buildings as part of the broader neighborhood, not just standalone assets. So as property owners in downtown Pittsburgh, we really feel like we have a role to play in creating active, welcoming streets, and especially on the ground floor. You've done some amazing research here, Kate, talking about the importance of retail, and I really do feel like that's where the vibrancy comes from. That's what makes a downtown, metropolitan area feel alive. And so when the storefronts are alive, the feeling of the block really changes. And so it creates energy and it feels vibrant. And that's exactly what the pop-up did. It really created a practical way for us to be a part of that activation, and for Moonshot Museum to be a part of what's already happening downtown. And so our property at 810 Penn Ave is, just one small asset there in the broader picture and tapestry of downtown. And I really do think that these pop-ups bring curiosity. Moonshot Museum in particular brings this sense of discovery that I just love. Dr. Brown was just talking about the Artemis mission. What a fun thing to get to be a part of. I'm a father of 3 girls, and I can tell you that curiosity is contagious. They often ask me questions, and I find myself asking those same questions, and it brings an excitement and an energy to the adults, when those kids bring that curiosity. And so I think that's what this pop-up did, and we're just thrilled that our property downtown got to be a part of it. Again, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, the entire Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Grateful to get to be a part of what you're doing.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate everything that you've done and kind of the partnership, because without property owners coming to the table and being willing to partner and often take, below market rate for these pop-up spaces, none of this would be possible. So I'm really thankful to Birgo Capital for seeing the potential and seeing the kind of vision and saying, yeah, we're in. Let's see how this works, and let's get something really unique in downtown. And so thank you. And so with that, I really want to kind of lean us into our final key takeaway before we talk next steps. But really, we just walked through a whole lot of data and then a whole lot of completed projects. But really storefront activations, new business openings, leasing, new leases, that can really happen, and it can happen quickly when you have this partnership alignment. And it's really kind of worth pausing on that. It's really important to recognize how many partners came to the table so that we were able to move these projects forward very quickly, efficiently, effectively, but also safely. I think we went through permitting, at the speed of the work. Pittsburgh's permitting, licensing, and inspection team worked alongside us in real time so that approvals that might typically take months were turned around in days or weeks. And importantly, that didn't come at the expense of safety or of code compliance, but it just showed that you can have that responsiveness when that partnership and deadline is sort of aligned. City Hall was really an active partner. The mayor's office didn't just support this work. They engaged directly. They picked up the phone. They reached out to property owners. They helped move conversations forward. And in some cases, that meant turning years of inaction into deals that closed in a matter of months or weeks. And then funders aligned with the goals of activating downtown, providing a clean, safe, and engaging neighborhood for both visitors, but also for Pittsburghers. And then third, the NFL draft really acted as a catalyst. It created that shared deadline. It aligned everyone, public, private, philanthropic, civic, around that common goal. It wasn't the reason this work happened, but it was the reason it was able to happen so quickly and so visibly. It really concentrated that attention, that urgency, and that coordination in a way that brought folks to the table and got so much done so quickly. So I think that takeaway is the model of partnership. When the mayor's office, when city departments, when property owners, when brokers, when partners, when funders, when the PDP align and we're all moving together, downtown can move at a very different pace. So now, how do we carry that forward? How do we maintain that level of coordination and responsiveness beyond a moment like the draft into kind of what comes next? So Jeremy's going to lead us into what the next steps are.
Thanks, Kate. And thanks again to Andrew and Jimyse for joining us today and for the work that you've done. Super thrilled to see that activation again right across the street from Arts Landing. And that has already become just a major destination for families. And activities like this certainly kind of solidify and just provide more of an opportunities for folks who continue to engage in downtown. Before I move forward, I do want to just encourage folks, if you do have a question or comment, please do use that chat feature, the Q&A feature here in the Zoom. We'll be happy to jump on those. I also just want to reiterate, the key to this is sustained momentum. Our goal with the continuation of this vibrancy initiative is to grow our active coverage from 83% to 90% by the end of this year. That's going to take all of you. We need your help if you represent a property or you are familiar with the space that you walk by daily that you're like, this could use a little something. We want to know about it. Reach out to us and talk to us. If you have connections, put us in connect with those people. This work, again, only happens through partnership. I'd like to thank the City of Pittsburgh and ShiftWorks for their partnership on getting us through this first round. I'd also like to thank the Venter Foundation, the Buell Foundation, the Colcomp Foundation, the Eden Hall Foundation, the Hillman Foundation, the Burke Family Foundation, and the Heinz Endowments for all of their support of this effort. As I mentioned, a new round of funds are in place. We also are going to be announcing soon some new programming dollars for small scale activations and events that are happening. So be on the lookout for later this month or early June an announcement for another round of applications for that. Again, it's really talking to our community members, finding out who's doing cool things, who's super talented, and could find themselves having a home here in downtown Pittsburgh. The second is, again, looking at you, supporting these businesses, right? These new businesses only survive and thrive if we support them. So we need to make sure that we're changing our habits, getting out of our comfort zones and going to that new restaurant that you walk by several times, but you haven't quite connected with. You need to talk to your neighbors and post on your social media about the things that you're seeing and doing here in downtown, because it all starts with that first purchase of coffee, right? Like, you got to get in there and do the thing every single day to make sure that these businesses are here. We have some incredible stores that have recently opened where you can find those birthday gifts. You can buy that loved one in your life the flowers that they so much deserve. You can find that new brunch spot or that new cocktail destination downtown now in ways that you haven't been able to historically. So if we want to keep this reduction of storefront and ensure that there's very limited turnover, it's going to be imperative on all of us to get in there and do the things. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to some of the questions that we have. I'm going to start with our first question here, which comes to us from Colleen. She's asking, are there retail establishments, when we're defining businesses, are these all retail establishments, or do they include professional offices, public or government uses, et cetera? And I'm going to kick that over to Kate.
So when we're looking, when we're defining businesses, particularly in that business churn and new businesses added, we're specifically looking at ground floor retail. So that's not including the kind of professional offices or kind of government uses. It includes things like, your traditional soft goods, hard goods retail, restaurant, food and beverage, and then some of the services like salons or other kind of boutique retail, as well as some fitness in those components. But yeah, it does not include sort of the office uses.
Got it. Thanks, Kate. Next question, will residential conversions be discussed today? And if so, let's talk about the downtown schools and potential improvement there, kind of leaning in on the fact that successful residential conversion requires adequate access to high quality schools. So today we're not going to be discussing kind of the conversion program. That will be a future topic for downtown. And we're happy if someone wants to go offline and kind of talk through what we know with respect to it's about 1,100 units that we're tracking right now that are up for conversion in 16 different projects. I think the question about schools is definitely one to lean in on. We are thankful for the 3 schools that we have down here now. I think they're serving kind of a diverse group of kids, really from around Allegheny County, with 2 charter schools and then kind of the flagship Pittsburgh Public Kappa program, which I have had 2 kids go through middle school there. It is imperative. I do think we have some good options, and if folks want to make a go of Pittsburgh Public, they can certainly do that here in downtown Pittsburgh. I think one of the things I'm most excited about when we think about kind of the evolution of downtown living is I remember moving to Pittsburgh 15 years ago, coming here from Brooklyn and having two young kids. They were 5 and 3 and one on the way. And I was like, okay, well, we'll just live downtown. We live in an apartment in Brooklyn. We can just move into a slightly larger apartment. Everybody wins here in Pittsburgh. It's like, how many kids live here? And I was told very quickly that there were 4 kids that lived in the Golden Triangle, and realized that I didn't really want to almost double the downtown population of kids by doing so. And one of the reasons that we chose not to do that was there was no playground in the Golden Triangle. And if you raise kids in a city, in an apartment, you realize the importance of kind of vibrant outdoor space and the connectivity that creates the community around you. So I couldn't be more excited to have a playground in Arts Landing. I think that we're going to start there and really lean in on keeping those couples who maybe are expecting or have a kid in their life. I think that under 5 population is one that we can leverage. There's plenty of great coffee shops. And I think you can grab a cup of coffee and now head over to Arts Landing and kind of meet your people over in that space. And I think we can keep folks there a little bit longer. And I do think that will evolve into the need for maybe community-based, neighborhood-based elementary schools. That is something that we do not have here right now. We do have city charter high school and then urban pathways, which does have an elementary program. But for the most part, we have a lot of daycares. Now we have this new playground, but we don't have a lot of, I'd say, 5 to 15-year-old learning opportunities here in downtown. So I do think that will be an evolution. Hopefully that answered your question. There is a question about the status of the supermarket in downtown. There was, I think, an early announcement of a supermarket going into the Liberty Avenue, the 800 block of Liberty Avenue last year. Unfortunately, that deal did not see the light of day. So that is not moving forward. We continue to hear good things from Target about the success of their grocery. Much to their chagrin, I think they need some more storage space. They are often running out of freezer and refrigeration space in that store. But I think it is speaking to the market, and also folks are paying attention as Target begins to discuss both, I guess, on the record and off the record about the success of that store. I do think that we're getting closer to that tipping point where we could see a full-scale grocery store. There's still conversations occurring about the growth in the Strip District and in the Golden Triangle and the opportunities for new supermarkets to serve this arguably unmet need, but nothing to report on that at the moment. Trying to see. Let's see here. Are these new businesses in connection with PA Career Link Pittsburgh? It might be cool to convene the new businesses coming to downtown and have regular meetings about no-cost services we offer to employers. Thank you, Leo. We can certainly look into that and try and learn a bit more about.
Yeah, just to respond to that, we're actually working on kind of pulling together some of the new business owners as a kind of cohort model and connecting them with the variety of resources for small businesses through the different kind of organizations that provide particularly some of the lower no-cost support. So that's definitely something kind of on the horizon in the next couple of weeks that we're starting.
Great, thank you. There's a few comments in here. I think a question about the need for more value-driven dining opportunities, looking at places that are kind of more middle market in downtown to not necessarily go for a high-end steak or seafood dinner. Kate, you want to speak to that? We don't have a ton of restaurant activity in our pop-up or rent abatement program, but I know it's definitely something that we've talked about.
Yeah, we do have a handful. So often with the pop-ups, we don't tend to lean as much into particularly the food end of things because you need a fully built out kitchen that can kind of get through the permitting process. But we do have a handful of folks kind of coming through the rent abatement pipeline that will kind of meet that middle dining ground. In addition to that, some of it is just, working with our downtown brokers and kind of recruiting new businesses to downtown to fill some of those gaps, and then making sure that we support the existing businesses that are in downtown that already kind of meet those needs. We really want to make sure we have that good mix of, quick service to kind of middle tier restaurants, and then kind of the higher end kind of dining, fine dining. And so we do have quite a number of restaurants in downtown that kind of meet with that variety. We have a handful more coming soon. And then I work very closely with our brokers as much as I can to help and assist with recruiting efforts. And I know we've got some hopefully exciting concepts in the pipeline that we'd like to see open in the next year. So hopefully we can meet all of those needs.
Thanks, Kate. No, well said. There's a question here on the proliferation of vape shops and how that factors into business growth numbers and the research presented, and how we should view those vape shops. We have not counted those in our vibrancy initiative efforts. It is typically a use that we do not support through any sort of grant or incentive program, realizing that really nationally this is something that has seen just a significant increase in just the sheer volume of those stores. We are all about free trade and business here, but we certainly are working closely with our partners in public safety to address some of the illegal activity that sometimes goes hand in hand with these stores, between the vape shops and the beer stores, public intox and the like is something that we really want to push for zero tolerance. We do think it has a big impact on our storefronts and the way in which people see downtown. It is kind of the ebb and flow. I do remember, obviously the rules around liquor stores and beer stores has changed significantly, but I remember getting here and being like, oh, you cannot buy a 6-pack of beer in the Golden Triangle. So it definitely was a gap in the market. I'd say that our needs are currently met from that perspective. I will say kudos to the property owners, particularly coming out of COVID. I think we could have leased every single storefront here to a vape shop or a beer store. That was the deals that were getting done, not just here in downtown, but living in the East End, seeing that pop up there as well. So there is some legislation, both at the local and being looked at the Commonwealth level, to kind of address some of the proliferation that we've had here and some of the bad actors as you look at the cannabis industry and marijuana sales. All of those things I think are something that are super important. I would encourage folks to really lean in to the judicial system. A lot of these things are getting kind of taken care of in our courts. It's super important that we pay attention to who we're voting into office in these spaces, because they do have a real meaningful impact on any sort of action that can be taken against these bad actors. So if you have questions about that and want to talk offline, we're happy to lean in on some of those conversations there too. Our partner, Andy Masick, is asking the question about, it's the 250th anniversary of the United States this year. Can we collaborate on programs and pop-ups and exhibits to activate in downtown? We most certainly can. If there are ideas that folks have about that, we are knee-deep in planning with the city and a whole host of partners some of the programming that will be happening really the week leading up to the 4th of July celebrations. So if folks have an interest in that, definitely let us know. There is also a question, point of clarification about the playground outside of the U.S. Steel building. That is in fact a playground, but it is, as you I think question here, it is not publicly available. It's just for participants in the daycare that's located in U.S. Steel Tower. So that's not something. Elizabeth from Spacebar is saying a Trader Joe's would transform downtown. I would not disagree with you there. I know it's something that that we have heard from a lot of folks they'd like to see, us included. I'd love to be able to grab those Takis that my whole family loves from Trader Joe's from here instead of having to schlep to East Liberty for that. It's definitely on our radar, something we'd like to see there. Other questions about the Downtown Neighborhood Association and the impact of that. I think, Kate, myself, Aaron worked closely with the team of the DNA. Everything that was kind of underway from a retail attraction perspective is still moving forward there. I believe there's some conversations happening in the community about ensuring that there is a residential voice. If we want to, in fact, grow the downtown population from a little over 7,000 that we have now to 15,000, it's important that those individuals that are a part of that movement do have a voice collectively in our community to advocate for the things that they need to elect our local officials and have kind of an advocacy for them. So I think that's a conversation that would be welcome to be a part of and to have there. I think that pretty much gets all of the questions that are answered or that were asked. I would like to make a note. I'd like to acknowledge Aaron Sukanik, our colleague who I'm not sure if he's still on the call, but he was on here earlier. He and his family just welcomed their third child on Mother's Day. So if you see Aaron, hopefully not in the next 2 weeks because he is taking some time off, but the next time that you see him, please congratulate him and his family on this new addition into downtown. We have recorded this session and we'll be posting this video for folks to continue to watch as many times as their heart desires. You can also forward this over to a friend. As Kate mentioned, she went through a lot of data and a lot of that's kind of hard to listen and absorb in real time. So that will be available. And if there's anything that we can do from a data perspective to help you make a pitch or help you better understand what we know about the market, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to